my cute shirt. Ha. Alright. Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today we're gonna talk about all of the books that I read in August. Spoiler alert, it was a lot. Okay, so in August I ended up reading 19 books over the course of the month. So because of that, and because I know how much I like to ramble, we're gonna try to make this as quick as possible when giving my thoughts about these. If I have a lot to say, I don't know, I'll try to keep it to a smaller amount. Okay, let's just jump right into all the books. The first book I read in August was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a book in verse, and it is about two sisters, Yahara and Camino, who live in New York and in the Dominican Republic, respectively. They don't find about each other's existence until the untimely death of their father in an airplane crash. This was such a beautifully told tale. Elizabeth Acevedo's writing is absolutely gorgeous, and as I said, this is a book in verse, so everything is told that way and is just absolutely gorgeous. There are a lot of emotions within this book, of course, but it's still such a beautifully told tale, and I really overall loved the way that they addressed family in here, and grief, and family in all of its forms can be very complicated, and I really liked how that was kind of dealt with in this book. It's split between the two girls' perspectives, and I thought that was also very delightful. I ended up giving this 5 stars. The next book I read was Seance Tea Party by Ramona Yee. This is about a girl named Laura. Laura is kind of afraid of growing up. She doesn't really want to give up the things that she loves that may or may not be a little bit childish or weird, but she sees her friends around her kind of growing up and getting more into like social media and video games, hanging out with friends, gossiping, stuff like that, and she is still very much into like playing with toys, ghosts, spooky things, etc. So she ends up summoning for fun a ghost and meets Alexa, who is the spirit of a young girl, and the two become friends. I really loved this book. First of all, the artwork is... There goes the plane. Hold on. Really? So first of all, the artwork is really beautiful. I found this to be a pretty charming part of the book, and this also manages to tackle some really big emotions in here with such beauty and care. It's talking about, you know, leaving your childhood behind and growing up, but just because you grow up doesn't mean that you have to give up the things that you love. I mean, we do adapt and evolve as we grow, but you can still like the same things and be a teenager and be an adult. Like, that's perfectly fine. And it also talks about friendship and grief on some level, and it's such a gorgeous book. I bawled my friggin' eyes out, but I just absolutely adored this. I gave this 5 stars. The next book I read was The Prince and the Dressmaker. This is by Jen Wang. This follows both Prince Sebastian and Francis. Francis is a dressmaker who has been tasked with secretly helping Prince Sebastian dress up as this gorgeous fashion icon named Lady Crystalia. this was also super charming. The artwork in here as well was just absolutely adorable. I really loved it. The style itself was just cute. I also really enjoyed the fashions that were in here. Like that dress. That dress is just gorgeous. It's very sweet. I really liked the relationships in here, the friendship between Sebastian and Frances, and also the way relationships kind of adapt between other characters as well. I thought this was such a funny and cute story that is also heartwarming, and like I said, the fashions are just gorgeous. I gave this 5 stars. Then I picked up Aru Shaw and the End of Time. This is by Roshani Chokshi, and this is the first book in the Pandava Quartet. This is about Aru, who lives in the Museum of Ancient Indian Arts and Culture with her mother, who is the curator of the museum. She goes to a private academy, and all of her other classmates are very like rich and privileged and are always jetting off to exotic places and spending lots of money, and Aru doesn't really do that. So she ends up making up these big stories about crazy adventures and things that she does. And one day, a couple of her classmates stop by the museum to call her out on her stories, and in the process of trying to impress them, she ends up accidentally unleashing this demon who is going to awaken the god of destruction, unless she stops it. So, this book, I was super hyped for this book. I was really hoping that, you know, this was gonna be more kind of Percy Jackson-esque adventure in a way, but with like a totally different pantheon, and I thought, hey, that's a super good way to get introduced to this culture, like, because all I know about it is based on what Hollywood has told me, and I know that's like highly inaccurate. This was still pretty disappointing. To be honest, I know that I am not the target audience for this book. This is for middle grade. I'm a grown-ass adult. But yeah, there's a couple of things that I didn't particularly like about this. One would be, I found it a little suspect that Aru was mispronouncing, like every time she would meet different like deities and characters and stuff, she would mispronounce their names or not seem to really know about what was going on. And I mean, no, I don't want to like police a culture that I have nothing to do with and say that that's like weird, but I will say in the context of this character, considering that her mother is the curator of the Museum of Ancient Indian Art and Culture, and she has lived there for her entire life, and she also apparently is responsible for occasionally taking guests around and talking about various like stories and items that are in the museum, it's a little suspect that she wouldn't know the correct pronunciation of things, nor different details that you would assume she would know, considering what she does in her free time and also who her mother is. So that was a little part that was just, it bothered me. Another section that bothered me was honestly the humor that was in here. It's very much, it didn't really feel like the humor for a novel. It felt more like the humor for a screenplay, for like Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. Since I am, again, a little older than the target audience, and I also had 3 channels growing up, I didn't really get a lot of exposure to that stuff when I was a kid and teenager. So anytime I've ever randomly seen episodes of like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody or iCarly or something, I don't find it funny. It's very over the top and lame. Again, if that's shit that you like, that's you because you were raised in it, that's your sense of humor, that's how it's developed. I wasn't exposed to that a lot, so I don't find it particularly funny. And if you enjoyed those things, you will probably find this freaking hilarious because the sense of humor that is in those shows was in here. Again, because that's not my kind of thing, I didn't find this even remotely funny. And that was depressing because this has like jokes galore throughout the entire like book. The last thing I kind of had a problem with was basically I felt like this went on for too long. There was a big climactic part and we could have ended like right there, or maybe she could have tacked on like an epilogue and wrapped things up really quick for us. Instead, she drew it out for like another chapter or two and it just felt highly unnecessary, especially considering that this also gives a sneak peek to the second book, and it looks like we're like talking about the same things that occurred in those two chapters again, and it just kind of felt like she could have just ended at the climactic part or like immediately following it, and then could have just jumped into everything in the next book rather than drag it out and then end it at an awkward place. It just felt a little unnecessary. Things that I did like. I did enjoy the fantastical elements of this. I did like, while I didn't particularly enjoy Aru, I did like a character that gets to know over the course of the book called Minnie. But yeah, I was pretty much over most of the other characters in general. But yeah, I did like the fantastical elements. I did like the world that's being created here. I did see online some kind of discussion on whether this is okay because deities in here are actually part of an active religion as opposed to, for example, Rick Riordan writing about ancient Rome and Greece and stuff like that, where nobody really, it's not an active religion anymore, unless you're like a particular pagan that works with that pantheon. So it's just, I saw a little controversy there, so that's another thing to note. Basically, again, I'm not part of it, so I can't really have an opinion either way on it, but I did just see that there was kind of a discussion here and there between people who were offended and people who were like, I love it. So, I don't know, that's just something to note as well. I ended up giving this 3 stars, because there were elements of it that I did like, but honestly, for the rest of it, I don't think, even though I'm super, like, curious about who the other Pandavas are, I don't think I really want to slog through the rest of the books to find out anything. So, ultimately disappointing. So, because I was kind of bummed about that, I ended up rereading a romance series to kind of comfort myself, and then also was disappointed partially with this series as well. So August was a weird reading month, basically. The series that I decided to reread is the Bride Quartet. This is by Nora Roberts. This follows 4 friends, Mackenzie, Emmeline, Laurel, and Parker. They used to play Wedding Day all the time when they were kids, and as adults they have managed to turn their game into an actual business. They run Vows, which is a wedding planning full service like company. Basically, they'll be with you every step of the way, from your engagement photos to your wedding day and blah blah blah. So basically this is following their work as well as their own love stories. So the first book is Vision in White, and this follows Mac, who is the photographer for Vows. Her love interest, his name is Carter. He is the best boy of the entire bunch. He is a very sweet school teacher at the local academy, Also, this is supposed to be in, I think, Greenwich, Connecticut, so everybody's like, money all the time. So, not that I know what it's like to live in Connecticut, but what little I know of it, that's what I know. So this follows their love story. Mac is also dealing with a very toxic mother. And that was an element that I enjoyed of the story, as well as kind of talking about like toxic family versus found family. And this series also has the found family trope, which is something that I very much enjoy. These friends, they've been friends again since childhood. They've created this business and this family with each other. And Parker's housekeeper, who has like basically been like kind of a surrogate mom for all of them in a sense. Anyway, yeah, this first story, I love their relationship. It's cute. I thought things resolved very well. This series and all of Nora Roberts' writing is known a lot for the funny banter that she has between her characters, and that's something that I always really enjoy in her books, and something I very much enjoyed in here. There were good relationships all around, and yeah, I just really loved this book. Mac and Carter are my favorites out of the bunch, and yeah, I gave this 5 stars. Then we move on to Bed of Roses, which follows Emma and her love interest. I'll kind of keep it vague on the other love interests if you're interested in reading this series, just in case, even though it's like on the inside of the cover, but in case you were, I don't know, reading this in order. Anyway, here we are. So Emma is the florist of the group. I really loved her family. She has a very large, loving family. Loved them. Liked the relationship, seeing the relationship progress in here. I enjoyed that. Things I didn't particularly enjoy. Emma. She was fine for most of the book. But, so one part in here is not really her fault. And that has to do with Del, or Delaney. He is the elder brother of Parker and is kind of like a surrogate brother for the other girls in the quartet. He's known them all since they were infants, basically, and he has some weird possessive thing about them because they're his sisters.
Hey all, so this is Future Jen breaking in for just a moment here. I'm, as you can see, editing right now, and I have tried to edit my critique of Bed of Roses as best as I can, and no matter what I do to it, it's basically just me saying fuck in a lot of very inventive ways, because I guess I was a lot more head up about that book than I thought when I started recording. So I figured I could just say my thoughts or try to say them a little bit better right now. Aspects of the book that I did not enjoy. Those aspects were the behavior, 1, of a male character and 2, of a female character. The first would be Del, who is the surrogate brother to the other women. He is Parker's actual brother, and he acts as the surrogate older brother to the other 3. He kind of acts like a caveman. When he finds out about Emma's relationship with their mutual friend, and he has a physical altercation with that friend because how dare you touch her and blah 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 crap. It's really unnecessary. It's kind of disgusting, and I didn't really like that aspect of the book, and when he is in the other books I definitely had a poor opinion of him throughout because of that frankly outdated, shitty-ass behavior. The other problem that I had was Emma, and that was because of something that happens a little later in the book. I'm going to try to be vague. It's going to sound weird. I will say that there is an instance of her love interest. He's having a bad attitude but his attitude is not insulting in any way. Like, he definitely is having a bad day, but he does not physically or verbally or anything react in a way that's nasty. He's just in a foul mood. And he does something that's so tiny and without any like ill intent behind it. And like I said, it's not physical or anything to her. It's just something in action that he does in general. While I can understand partially why it might be upsetting, instead of it being upsetting and acknowledging that it's just a little bit, or actually using her big girl words and telling him that that is upsetting, she instead flies off the handle and basically acts like every terrible stereotype of a hysterical female. And I find that distasteful because, yeah, okay, so ladies are emotional sometimes, but we don't fly off the fucking handle like that. Like, I found that to be just extremely childish. And then what I think made me more angry throughout the book was the reactions of her friends, because her friends, not a one of them said a darn thing to her about it. Instead, they just hugged her and cuddled her and treated her like a little baby. And not a single one of them, even Parker, not even Parker, sat her down and gently but firmly tried to have a talk with her at all. And honestly, if she were my friend, sometimes part of being a friend is not just hugging them and calling them sweet baby and, you know, that. Sometimes being a friend is sitting your friend down and telling them, whether through these words directly or maybe in a more gentle manner, that they need to cut out the bullshit. Sometimes being a friend is telling your friend not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And part of what this girl needed to hear was that she was acting like a moron. And maybe not in that direct manner of a way, but she needed to be told that that kind of irrational behavior is not going to help anything, and if she can't obviously handle a serious adult relationship, then maybe she shouldn't be in one. That was my objection. I think I have said this more succinctly than I had the first time, when it was just a barrage of fucks and dams and everything. But yeah, those were my main objections to that book, and it definitely colored how I felt about the characters in the other books as well. Like, anytime Emma came up in the other novels, I didn't even want to read anything that she said because I was so fucking disgusted by her. So, yeah. This ended up getting 3 stars, and that's saying a lot, and the only thing that made it 3 stars instead of 2 stars was because the other characters in the book were good, and the other parts of their relationship were good, except for this last part. Book 3, Savor the Moment. This follows Laurel. Laurel is the baker, pastry chef of the group. Laurel wasn't always my favorite of the bunch, to be honest. She kind of has an attitude problem, and sometimes her attitude's funny, and then the rest of the time it kind of left me wondering why any of the rest of the bunch put up with her at all, because there is some mean shit that comes out of her mouth sometimes. There was still some drama in here as well. It was nothing like book 2, but there was still some drama in here with her and her love interest. It resolved fairly quickly and also fairly like a goddamn adult, but at the same time, I mean, come on guys, it's the 21st century. I think we're over
the Disney princess reaction where something happens, whether it be a small thing, a big thing, whatever, and we just run to the bedroom, throw ourselves on the bed and sob like our heart's breaking. I mean, it worked with like, what? Belle, Cinderella, Ariel, whatever the fuck. Okay, I think as adults we're over this now. Otherwise, I thought that this did also delve into some good discussion on classism a little bit. All of the girls' families have money, so they kind of fit in pretty much. Laurel's family, however, went through a financial scandal when she was younger, so in the town's estimation, she's a little bit on the lower end of things, however. So meanwhile, her love interest is very rich and like a prominent family, so I did like that difference was kind of discussed in here a little bit, and I enjoyed the cooking aspects of that. I love baking, so I really enjoyed those parts of it as well. Yeah, it was better than this, I will say that. And like I said, the dramatic bits, but it resolved fairly okay. It was okay. I gave this 4 stars. Ever After is the last book. This features Parker, who is basically the mayo that holds the whole sandwich together. She kind of is the manager slash wedding planner slash grand ring master of the circus of weddings. She is everywhere once. She is on top of shit. And I really found her intimidating. She's like the epitome of an adult. But at the same time, also kind of enjoyed her. She figures her shit out. Her love interest is a little bit of a bad boy. And, I mean, he's got tattoos. He rides a motorcycle. He's sarcastic. He's a little, you know. There's a reason why I really enjoyed this series when I was younger, because, you know, bad boys. But at the heart of it, they're 2 people that are very much not ooey gooey about things, but deep down they really are. They're actually big softies, but on the outside there's like a lot of armor here. Really enjoy their relationship. I do have to say, there are some steamy scenes throughout these books. This was incredibly steamy. Like, sometimes, at one point it seemed like it was kind of on the verge of being not okay, except for the fact that Parker was most definitely a consenting adult for everything that occurred, so that was fine. And honestly, there is a little bit of drama faced in here as well, because of course we have to have some drama, but it was like worlds away from a couple of the other books. Like, everything was handled maturely and with such compassion and understanding between the 2 characters. I was like, yes, yes, this is what mature adult relationships are fucking supposed to be like. So, you know, loved that. Banter, found family again, good collection, geez, good conclusion to the series overall. I also gave this one 5 stars. The next book I read was Pride by Ibi Zoboi. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling following Zuri Benitez, who has 4 sisters and is very proud of her family, her heritage, and her town of, are they in Brooklyn? Shit! I'm really bad at all of the boroughs in New York City, so forgive me. The neighborhood she lives in is Bushwicks. It's somewhere in New York City. I think it's Brooklyn. I'm probably wrong. I do apologize. But she's very proud of her neighborhood, proud of her heritage, proud of her family. In walks the Darcy family. They have recently bought and fixed up an old abandoned house that was across the street from the Benitez family, and they have 2 apparently very gorgeous sons, Ainsley and Darius. Ainsley and Zuri's sister Janae hit it off really well, but Zuri and Darius kind of butt heads. This book, this book. I did like the setting. I liked the setting was in the city. I liked that there was discussion on gentrification of neighborhoods, discussions on class and racism. Those were all good. I liked that this also talks about kind of change and like growing up. And parts of growing up that involve a lot of change. I also, Zuri writes poetry in here, and I enjoyed the poetry aspect as well. There's some note in the acknowledgments from the author which makes me believe that the poetry might have actually been written by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is cool. I'm not 100% sure. It sounded like that, but I don't know for certain. I did enjoy the poetry aspect of this as well, though. Other things, though, I honestly hated Zuri. I thought she was kind of a brat. She was incredibly judgy of people around her, especially the Darcys, judgy of people in general. She's kind of a jerk for most of the book. She's also extremely possessive over her sister Janae, and it's like, I mean, yeah, you missed your sister. She was away at school, and you're happy she's back for the summer. But let her breathe. Like, she is allowed to have her own life, and she's allowed to do things that don't fucking include you, okay? Like, she just keeps getting in the way when her sister wants to hang out with, you know, Ainsley and wants to do things, and she's just... she's a lot, and it kind of sucked reading this when hating Zuri so much because she is the narrator of the tale, and I didn't want to hear anything from her because I just hated how much of a jerk she was being all of the time. Slowly improved over the course of the book, but it was very slowly. Darius, I honestly didn't mind Darius too much, but we just don't find out too much about him. We know a little bit here and there, but he's still kind of like a 2D character throughout, and that was kind of sad. I would have liked to get a little more insight into him, a little bit more fleshing out of the character in general. The relationship that develops between Zuri and Darius honestly felt kind of rushed and a little bit forced. It just disliking, 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 oh my god, now we're making out. It's like, you know, it felt like there could have been a little bit more time in there. We didn't have to like go straight into the making out. There are some, I don't know, it felt a little bit rushed in the story. I also felt like there could have been a little bit more in here. There are parts of this book where Zuri, you know, is very, like I said, she's being very judgy of people in general, and she's very judgy about, like, the Darcys for having money, for kind of gentrifying the neighborhood a bit by making and, like, fixing up and buying that house, which I know gentrification is, like, a big problem that is happening in a lot of cities, but it was like, just because Darius is a little bit different than her, she just judges him, and it felt like we could have had a lot more of a discussion on the Darcys being viewed as not black enough. Like, it's talked about in here a little bit, like her disgust for him and how she feels a lot better about the boys who are more street in her neighborhood. And at one point Darius does talk about how hard it can be sometimes because he feels like he doesn't really belong anywhere, because he is black, so he doesn't fully fit in with his white school friends, but he doesn't fit in with the new neighborhood he's moved in because he's not black enough. And I felt like that could have been expanded upon more and talked more in here about that. I thought that that would have been more, just something that could have had a little bit more of a discussion in here, other than, I don't know, it just kind of felt like Zuri wasn't entirely fully hearing him when he was talking about this, and it just felt like there could have been a little bit more involved. I guess I was also a little bit disappointed in this too, which sucks. I just haven't found a Pride and Prejudice retelling that I like yet. That is a little depressing. I gave this 3 stars. Then I did a reread of Small Spaces and Dead Voices so I could read Dark Waters. This is a series by Catherine Arden. So Small Spaces follows Ollie. Her mother died the previous year and she is obviously having a very hard time with it. One day she ends up seeing a woman trying to throw away a book. She rescues the book and starts to read it, and it's all about this family who was basically cursed by the Smiling Man. Flash forward to like the next day or so, her class is going on a field trip to a local farm, and she slowly realizes that the local farm that they are visiting is the farm from the book and is owned by the family who was cursed by the Smiling Man. And the Smiling Man is now coming for her classmates. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It's set in Vermont, so that's a big point for me. It's got creepy elements. It's got friendship. It has, honestly, the thing in here that is very scary is something that I'm a little afraid of, but don't really tell a lot of people that I'm afraid of it. So that was a lot. And it's just, it has such heart as well. There's some heartbreaking parts in it, some heartwarming parts. I just loved all of the characters that were in it. It's just such a wonderful book. So I loved my reread of it. I gave it 5 stars. Dead Voices is the second book. This takes place in fall. This takes place in the winter. Ollie and her friends are going to go skiing at this house, this like inn that's just opened up, but the inn actually has been they're all caught in like this blizzard, and there seems to be evil lurking in the inn. Also super spooky as hell, heartbreaking, heartwarming, wonderful friendship, quirky characters, fucked me up a good one. I gave this 5 stars. Dark Waters takes place during the summer, and this discusses what champ actually is. Or, according to Catherine Arden, what champ actually is. This deals with like the folklore. Champ, if you don't know, is basically Lake Champlain's version of the Loch Ness Monster. Champ, normally thought of to be a girl. She is, yeah, there's a lot of people that say they have seen Champ. There's different documentations about it. Honestly, I read a book about it that was fascinating back in high school. I will have to try to find it, and I'll try to like either link it down below, or I'll like tell you more about it if you're interested. I fucking loved it. I did like a report on it in college, which probably didn't help people thinking that I was a weirdo. But anyway, so Dark Waters deals with like Champ and like haunted folklore around Lake Champlain. So I loved that this was from one particular character's point of view. So this is from Ollie's point of view. This is split between Ollie and Coco, two of the main characters, and this one is entirely from one of the other main characters, Brian's point of view. I love that it was that. I love getting more insight into Brian. It wasn't as scary. Like, there's definitely some unsettling pieces in here, but it was not nearly as creepy as the other two books. However, this book had me on the edge of my seat the entire time I was reading it. I was literally sweating reading this book. I was so worried about what was going to happen. The ending honestly did upset me a little bit, but just because I know that now I have to wait 1 to 2, or God help me, maybe not that many years, before we have the last book. Please, Catherine Arden, please write fast. I need to know what happens. I gave this 4 stars. Sorry if things have moved slightly. My camera was full, so alright, back into it. So following that, I ended up rereading The Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. This is a Hercule Poirot mystery. Hercule Poirot is on his way home after having helped out solve a case. The train he is on ends up getting snowbound, and in the course of this time of being snowbound, a murder is committed and he has to help solve it. This mystery is just absolute perfection to me. The setting, it's on a train. I fucking love trains. It is one of those mysteries where it's just one place and everybody has to stay in the same place and figure out who among the suspects is the killer. Love it. The characters are varied and extremely interesting. The setup is great. Poirot and his little gray cells are at their best. I just absolutely love it. Each character's story or their version of the previous evening's events are just wonderful. There are such little details that kind of add up to give you the solution, and even though of course I've read this several times and watched the movie of course, so I know who done it, but at the same time every single reading of it I find myself picking up on more subtle details that I missed the previous read through, and it just shows more how brilliant this woman was. I also loved Poirot's handling of the case, the questions he had, the deductions he made, and the ending is just... I'll be vague because I know this is very famous and a lot of people have either seen the movie or like read this, but still, I loved it. It is my favorite ending of a mystery ever. I just adore it. This was such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful reread. I gave this 5 stars. Next, I ended up cracking open my Oz Chronicles collection to read the first 2 books. These are by L. Frank Baum. Wizard of Oz. Most people know The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy caught up in a twister, deposited in Oz, Scarecrow, Tin Man, Cowardly Lion, her little dog Toto, haha, travel to meet the wizards, give them what they want, here we are. I loved it. It was delightful. I will admit, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I did when I was a kid. Definitely liked it a lot more now, but it was still pretty good. I love the Scarecrow, most of all. He is my favorite character, and I really liked some of the messages that were in here about what's really important, like how important home is, and like even if it's not very exciting, that's where the people you love are. And so I liked that. I really kind of like the idea that other people might see in you the things that you wish for. The Scarecrow doesn't think he is that smart, so he longs for brains, but He says the wisest things throughout the course of the book. The Cowardly Lion, despite being scared, does very brave things, even though he wishes for courage. And the Tin Woodsman is the most kindest, sensitive person on the entire trip, but he thinks that he needs a heart to help him actually be a feeling person. And it's just, I don't know, I love that. I love that it's like, you don't realize, you wish for things, but sometimes you don't realize that you already embody that. You already have those good qualities or something. I don't know. Anyway, loved it. Loved the reread. Gave it 4 stars. Then I also read The Marvelous Land of Oz, which does not involve Dorothy. This one involves a boy named Tip, who is like basically the servant, sort of, to this old witch or sorceress, who's kind of mean, and he likes to laugh. He likes to play tricks, especially on her. He ends up making a pumpkin man come to life, and it's like this crazy adventure of like just traveling along and picking up the most randomest companions and going to Oz to see the Scarecrow and the Tin Man are involved, and it's just like, it's so random. I do have to say, Glinda, I realized, is actually a pretty terrifying character. There's this one scene where she definitely smiles the sweetest, largest smile while threatening someone's life, and I mean, love her. Tip is also delightful. I enjoyed him and his journey over the course of the book. Again, gotta love the Scarecrow. There's a lot of puns in here. Some of them are quite bad, but they're also just really funny. I do have to say I wasn't a big fan of the Army of Revolt. I thought that the leader, Ginger, was a brat who really needed a slap in the face, and I don't know, there was some weird instances of like traditional gender roles being like talked about in here, where it's like girls are revolting, not like revolting, or I mean like a revolution, and like the men are all being made to like cook and do stuff, and they're all like unhappy about it, and this whole, it was weird. It was just this weird thing that felt like, they're like weird details that didn't really need to be in there, but L. Frank Baum just decided to put them in there anyway, and it was like, I don't really know what this is trying to say here, if it's trying to enforce gender roles or not enforce them or do something. I don't know. I thought it was confusing. I didn't particularly like it, but the rest of the story is pretty charming, and I did ultimately give this 4 stars. Then I finally finished reading Sisters of the Earth. This is a collection of journal excerpts, book excerpts, essays, and also poetry by a whole bunch of female authors, and kind of talking about women and women's relationship with nature itself. And this is all edited and selected by Lorraine Anderson. Like I said, there's themes of women in nature. Each chapter theme, so there's like our kinship with her, how we're embedded in nature, her pleasures, like the delight we take in nature, what is untamed in nature and women, how nature heals us, various like relations between like minerals and animals and things, how nature has been abused, and also walking in balance with nature. They're like split into various chapters. This was one of my textbooks in college for like my environmental lit class, so I'd only read bits and pieces here and there for the class, and this is a book where you kind of want to ruminate. You don't want to like read the whole thing in one sitting, so that's why it took me like a year to make my way through this, but it was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the various stories and poems and things in here. I really like them. My favorite poem is by Nancy Wood, and it's called My Help is in the Mountain. My help is in the mountain, where I take myself to heal the earthly wounds that people give to me. I find a rock with sun on it, and a stream where the water runs gentle, and the trees which one by one give me company. So must I stay for a long time, until I have grown from the rock, and the stream is running through me, and I cannot tell myself from one tall tree. Then I know that nothing touches me, nor makes me run away. My help is in the mountain that I take away with me. I thought that was really pretty. I liked a lot of this in here. Some of these were hard to read, especially the ones, there's a little bit discussion on climate change, which always gives me a big amount of anxiety. There was a little bit on hunting and like details of it that were a little gory, and that was kind of upsetting to read as well. But a lot of it was like fun. A couple of pieces were very funny, and it was very beautiful, very, very beautiful nature descriptions in here. But all of them were very important to read, very important reads. Honestly, for something that was from the 90s, as this collection was, and all of the stories kind of span from like the 1800s to about the 90s, and this was a text that I had in a class in like 2009 or 10, this still holds up. Like, it holds up incredibly well. And if you're interested in delving more into the relationship between women and nature, I highly recommend this. Just like I said, there's some like hunting stuff and rough stuff, and there's like some rape allegories in here, so just be aware of that. But yeah, I enjoyed reading this. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Then I ended up rereading Ink Gold by Clive Cussler. This is a Dirk Pitt mystery. Dirk Pitt is an adventurer he's like a mixture between Indiana Jones and James Bond in a sense. He has a good sense of humor, but he's also like this tough guy, and he has a strong sense of justice, and he's a little bit of a womanizer, but like not like a James Bond level of womanizer, because he does care about the women that he gets with a lot, but it's like, he's interesting. This follows Dirk and his best friend Al as they are called to a diving emergency in this sacred ancient well high in the Andes. They go to help the divers, who are archaeologists, and end up becoming embroiled in this like deadly series of confrontations with this family of art thieves. It's intense. Cussler's writing is just so good. It's just so damn good. Like, this guy was wonderful at taking the most boring fucking things and making them fascinating. Like, honestly, I would read something he wrote about paint drying, because he would probably make it really interesting. There's a lot of scientific things in here that, honestly, I am not a sciencey type of person, and I enjoyed every minute of this, including the more technical bits. Dirk and Al are part of the National Underwater Marine Agency, which is a government agency that kind of, as you would expect, studies the ocean. It's all involved with oceanography and underwater geology and occasionally archaeology and stuff like that. Dirk and Al are marine engineers, so that is their specialty, but they're also divers, and Dirk also collects classic cars. It's like a man's man kind of dude, but this does have some issues, like the male writing female issues with the voluptuous breasts and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, it's not the worst that I've ever read. I've read a lot more bits by male authors that make me highly uncomfortable. This is just, it's really not as bad as some others that I've read. Honestly, there was probably a little bit of freedom taken here with some Incan and Chachapoyan. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna feel terrible if I don't get this right. They're like older than the Incas. I'm probably mispronouncing it. I apologize. Yeah, honestly, there's probably some freedom that was made with some of that folklore. And there's a hell of a lot of Deus Ex Machina. Like, it's just crazy. There's also crazy happenstances, super cheesy lines sometimes. But the thing is it's just so damn entertaining. Like, this is an adventure novel at its best. It's action-packed. There's a lot of violence and just absolute sheer Deus Machina craziness. I will say there are some gory bits. There is some descriptions of torture and some violence and a little bit of allusion to assault and stuff like that. So if those are, you're particularly sensitive to those, maybe not this book. And maybe be careful with any of these books. But I mean, it's an adventure novel. I know I'm probably not the target audience for this, but I have loved these since I was in high school. I don't know. They're so entertaining, even with the super cheesy bits. It's just such a good time still, somehow. I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Rainbow Valley by Ellen Montgomery. Yes, I know, great departure from the previous book. This is the 7th book in the Anne series. This follows, you would think that it would follow Anne's children. It does not. They are characters in here, but mostly this book follows their friends, the Meredith children. There are 4 of them, 2 boys, 2 girls. It follows kind of their shenanigans. They are the local new minister's children, and they get up to all kinds of stuff. The minister lost his wife several years ago, and he's been kind of raising the kids on his own with the help of an aunt. Somebody's aunt. His aunt, his wife's aunt, I can't remember. Anyway, she's kind of a curmudgeonly old lady that doesn't know how to cook and just doesn't really bother with the kids at all. And he, besides really missing his wife and being sad about it, his brain is so far into the academic and theology that he just doesn't notice shit. Meanwhile, his 4 kids are getting up into all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're not like bad kids. They're pretty good kids. They're kids. And the people of Glen St. Mary are offended all the time by the minister's kids being so disrespectful. And it's like, they're just children. Get over your fucking selves. I have to say, it was not as saccharine as Anne of Ingleside, but it still was a little bit lackluster. I did like the Meredith kids. I did really like them. I actually honestly kind of like them more than the Blythe, so I wasn't super bothered that the Blythe kids were not main characters in this. Anne was barely in here at all. That was a kind of downside of it. There's a romance in here that happens, and you can see it coming from a mile away. It's super predictable, so that was like, well, duh. Overall, I will say it was okay, but it still is lacking the super charm of Anne of Green Gables or even Anne of Avonlea, so that was kind of disappointing. I gave it 3 stars. And the last book that I read in August was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. So this is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale. This follows the Thomas girls. Annalie is the main character. She is the one whose perspective this is from. She's like the 3rd or 4th oldest. I don't know. 4 of her sisters have passed away before this, and her mother has also recently passed away. So it's her and her 8 sisters, 1 who is older than her, and then everybody else is younger than her. They live in a world where gods are like, you can run into them, like they're deities, you can like run into them and stuff, so that's super fascinating. Basically, everyone in the village believes that there's a curse on this family, and the girls are kind of stuck. They're not really able to have a good time with anyone because no one really wants to get close to them because, again, they think that they are fucking cursed. Their father recently remarried. She seems super nice, but not all of the girls accept her, and she is pregnant with a child, one more for the brood. One of their sisters has recently passed away, and they can't tell if it was an accident or potentially suicide, but they're leaning towards accident. But Annalie believes there's more to it. She thinks that her sister is murdered, and this is her looking into it. The world building in here was fascinating. I was interested in the fact that gods have actual interactions with the people. I would have liked that to be discussed a little bit more, because honestly that was a little bit hard to wrap my mind around, because normally that doesn't happen unless it's like, you know, Percy Jackson or something. Yeah, I would have liked that to be expanded upon a little bit more, where people are just randomly running into deities and shit like that. But still, overall, the world building itself was pretty fascinating. I was very interested in what the hell was going on in this world. The atmosphere, I think she was going for like a gothic, and she nailed it. It is pretty unsettling all the way through. I really liked the fact that Annalie, it was hard to tell if she was an unreliable narrator or not. That, I liked that. Unreliable narrators are something that I either end up really loving or really hating. I found it fascinating in this one. I kind of enjoyed it. I do have to say, other things that I didn't particularly like. There's a romance element in here that I felt was a little bit forced. I wasn't totally on board with it. The villain, to be honest, super obvious. To me, anyway, I'm a suspicious asshole, so I found the villain upon the reveal to have been really obvious. If you're not a superstitious, or suspicious, excuse me, asshole like I am, I don't know, maybe you won't guess early on. Yeah, the climax itself was a bit out of left field. It was definitely shocking, but at the same time, it felt like it was too far out there for me, and I didn't 100% buy it. It was different. It was interesting, but I don't know. It felt too weird to me, and my main thing, I think, that bothered me throughout the book, that kind of pervaded my enjoyment of it overall, was that I didn't care about any of the characters. First of all, there's so many of them, and I could barely tell them all apart. You can tell Annalie, of course, but it was a little bit hard to tell the other girls apart. Her older sister, you could tell because she's usually saying something snarky or whatever. And then the younger girls, it was just, there's a set of triplets, and then there's like the other girls that are like younger, but I just could not honestly tell them apart. There's also a couple of really creepy kids in here, and I just didn't give a tuppence for any of them. So that made the events of the book not really high stakes for me as the reader, because I honestly didn't care if they were all saved or if the curse got any more of them, because I didn't really care about them. I didn't connect with them. I didn't, especially the creepy ones, I didn't really care if they lived or died, as terrible as that sounds. So, I mean, that definitely ultimately was what kind of hurt my overall enjoyment, was because I didn't feel for them. I wasn't afraid for their lives because I didn't care either way, which is depressing to think about. Overall, I will say, author definitely nailed it. Again, on the atmosphere, world building was interesting, but got a little crazy. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I think next time I'll just stick with the original fairy tale, pretty much. I gave this 3 stars. And that's it, guys. That was everything that I read in August. That was a lot of stuff. This is probably going to be a very long video, even though I tried to not make it one. I am so sorry. If you have managed to make it all the way through, thank you. Thank you for your persistence. I hope that you guys are having a great reading month. I hope that you read a lot of awesome things last month and are excited for this month's reading. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye!